Okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I think I have advantage to talk for two reasons in this afternoon. Because after lunch, half of the audience might be asleep and they will not notice what I said. So, which is good sign. And also, in these 2 years, very distinguished speakers. They talk about so many issues. There's nothing is left for me to say, but I will try to summarize their arguments one way or another. First of all, I would like to thank IDSA and especially Vishal Chandra and his team for organizing this conference. And it was very informative for me personally. The reason is that our history or narrative has just come all the way to India. We don't know beyond that what is going on in Nepal or Bangladesh or Sri Lanka and others. So we also have a limited narrative from this area. And also, I thanks Director General of IDSA because he was patiently staying here yesterday and today. And so he has a great interest because he's staying here and he's with us. With this discourse of perception, I would like to add a couple of other words which is shape the perceptions, which is the myths and communication. Because they shape the perception of the different countries and policies and others. And last year I was in Singapore and Professor Mooney was also in that conference. When I realized it in Afghanistan context, why we have a problem, and one of the things I just realized it is a problem of myths and perception of the Afghans about the international community, and also the international community myths and perception about the Afghans in Afghanistan. Because they were just thinking Afghanistan was discovered in this part of the world just after September 2001. So then they were just thinking nothing is existing in the country. So there was no institution, no government, no laws, regulation, and anything. So that was, they come with the concept of, okay, let's go there, and this is a completely primitive society. We will have to start everything from scratch there, and unfortunately, we dismantle our old system, which was built in 50, 60 years in Afghanistan, but instead of that, we were not able to build the new one. So that was, we have a completely communication gap existing. So I wrote that paper, which was published also last year. I just give you, as another story of Mullah Nasruddin in this area, which is most of this funny story people attribute to Mullah Nasruddin. Somebody asked him, Mullah Sahib, how old are you? They just told him 30 years old. Then 10 years later, the same person asked him, how old are you? They said 30 years old. He said, how it is possible? I'm 30 years old now and 30 years old, 10 years ago. He says, man has to say one thing. So our politics is also the same things. We just say one thing because if we change a little bit our policy or some things, so we might be, afraid. And this fear is create a problem and also shape the perception also. Because, and one of the reasons for the fear for a country like Afghanistan or Pakistan or some others is because democratic institution is not consolidated there. So as long as that is not, consolidation of the democratic institution is not happening, they will stay with fear. And everything they see from that angle and difficult to change their policy or status quo and others. And also, always the failed politician, they're trying to, convert attention from the internal policy and others to the outside world. What, okay, they blame others, either because in our region, for example, either we blame our neighbors or blame the US or other international community, but rather we should not blame ourselves because we cannot communicate with each other. We cannot, build a system and to, improve governance and developments and others. So that was the people should, support the government. So that is another problem I see in the perceptions. Coming to India, yes, Afghanistan and India has a long historic relationship. Especially in the last 10 years, India is the 5th largest donor. They help supported over $2 billion and very good projects the hydro, electric power lines, which was a good project, scholarship program, and some others was very good things, building the Afghan parliament building there. But in the same time, all these assistance were perceived by Pakistan, as a negative interference of soft powers in Afghanistan because of the strategic depth and others. But one thing I would like to say, because my good friend Dr. Simuradian said it yesterday, because India didn't do enough, and that was the reason 3 presidents failed in Afghanistan or regimes collapsed and others. I think that was not the intention. First of all, because the regimes collapsed, there were so many other internal, external factors for that. And also, India has sometimes have little options in Afghanistan, because India is distant neighbors of Afghanistan. And so they cannot do much also in Afghanistan. Yes, they can help, they can support, but they have to support the government of Afghanistan, the legitimate government of Afghanistan. That is the only, things they can help through Afghanistan. But beyond that, it's very difficult for India, because they cannot have a puppet government there, or they will not have some other ways how to help. It is difficult. For India is in difficult position in these things. Before I was coming to this conference, in my paper I quoted Yaqub Bangish, Dr. Yaqub Bangish, which is, I didn't know that he will be here in this conference. And he said is a history writing in every age as a bias operation. This is because no historian, no matter how much they try, can be free of all bias. Therefore, there are different versions in books on history. Since if one could write an unbiased and objective version of history, all other historians would be out of business. I just agree, because the reason, actually, Dr. Mooney also alluded to that, we are human beings. We have a connection with certain part of the, country or history or whatever. So our biases apply one way or another, if you want it or we don't want it. But in the same time, our history was, interpreted or different ways, either by others, by ourselves, the rulers, or by our neighbors. So everybody trying to, adjust it to their own interests, one way or another. And that was when we just say we, not generalize things, but always there is exceptional, maybe academics and others know, but Irish people in each country, they don't know about history of their own also. And that is also a big challenge. Because when I just come to, for example, India, when I just, meet even very, academic or distinguished people, so they just give me example of Kabuliwala, film and others. They just say that is the whole Afghanistan, and they just gave her that. Or if you just go to the West, people ask you, okay, yes, I read about Afghanistan, I read the Kite Runners, the novel, then they know about Afghanistan, everything. But the reality is not like that way. Even when we immigrated to Pakistan in the 80s, when, people in Peshawar, they call us Kabuli, it was kind of a little bit like, cursing us in the same time, The reason was that in Afghanistan, we don't call ourselves Kabuli, we call ourselves Afghans, And if somebody call, like, oh, Diliwala, so it is meaning kind of a demeaning, in one way. Even Kabul is our capital, but as not in the Afghan context. So that is our understanding about our own history or about our own problem here. So yesterday also some of our speakers, they come with very good suggestion, because we have to talk about those things can divide us, not to talk about those things can disunite us, in one way or another. So this was good, and also the curriculum, which is very, very important. I think, yes, there are some changes happening even in Afghanistan or in other countries, but once you get, some things in the childhood, it's very difficult to get rid of that. Professor Ghosh, I think he just mentioned yesterday, removing the memory, is not easy. For example, in our curriculum in Afghanistan, both in the Soviet times and also the Mujahideen, area, okay, they were all in the math. For example, if you have a 5 Russian, if you kill 5 of them, how many is left, So this was the whole curriculum was, designed on those things. So that was, in the mind of the children still, how to fight, how to kill, and all these things. Even in very, this have a psychological impact on the children also in the young age also. Because one of our very famous commander of Afghanistan, he told me once, when he visited Dubai for the first time, he saw this glasses building, too tall, and then he said, okay, if I just hit, that building with rocket, so what will, it maybe collapse very easily, His mentality was, how to kill and hit and fight and all these things. So this curriculum development that we should include peace education, from the childhood in the school system, I think that will be very, very big, things for everybody. When I just say we know a little bit about our history, or the international community know about history, I just give you, in 1987, we visited, as a visitor exchange program, the US, and we went to one small town called Keene in New Hampshire, and they had a newspaper by the name of Keene Sentinel. And I asked the publisher how many, national or international news you cover. So he told me 95% is the local news, which is soccer, football games or potlucks, parties and all these things. And only 5% of them is a county or state or national news. But he told us even in that time Afghanistan was, in the top of the US agenda. He just told me this was the first time they are publishing Afghanistan news in that newspaper. And the reason he just said we publish it because we visit Keene and it's become a local news, and that was the reason they are publishing the news. For example, when I just go through the newspaper here in my guest house here, I don't see that much about other countries or other something. So our people doesn't know that much about our neighbors and others. When I see here the newspaper, when I just scan it in the morning, in the last 2 days, I just see very, very little in the newspaper here. So that was how the media should, promote, visitor exchange programs, or, the media or the governments and others, and visit different parts of the, this part of the world. We have a problem in the countries also, because before this Ramadan, I'm from eastern part of Afghanistan, from Kunar. There was a people came, and I took them to Panjshir, and they were reluctant to go to the Panjshir because they said, okay, what we will do there? I said, let's go there and see. When we went to Panjshir and we come back, then I asked him, what do you see the differences? He said, Kunar Valley is bigger than that, more greener, is not that much. But the perception in Afghanistan is, okay, the Panjshiris, took everything. No, yes, 5 Panjshiris, 5 Pashtuns, from Heratis, from Mazaris and others, they benefited in the last 12 years, but not everybody. So that was the reason, is the exchange of people, is more important. But of course, this again depends on the political relationship, For example, when I come to India, if the embassy see I have a Pakistani visa, so then they have to think they should issue visa to me or not. Or if I go to Pakistan, they see the India visa in my passport, then they have a, this kind of constraints, for us, because this will happen first time in the history, where will be a peaceful, democratically transfer of power to the next person, whoever is that. So in that way, we will have a new beginning in Afghanistan. But if things, collapse there and election is not happen and international community, leave irresponsibly one way or another, then it will be difficult for Afghanistan and also for South Asia to reach to Central Asia. because they will also, close their own borders, and for infiltration of, extremist elements, and the same time as drug and other issues, which is things involving there. So these are, because of time is running, these are all issues, I'm, yes, cautious optimistic about the region. Of course, who just said is this morning, we should not learn by hard way. We have to learn from the experience of Europe, for example. If we just, yes, they have a European Union after 2 wars and, dying millions of people. So we should not wait for that kind of a threat to unite us, So we have to use opportunity and to unite us, but we should not, just wait for a threat to have a big things that happen in this area, and then we just look for opportunities how to, help each other and support each other. I will just conclude with my this remarks because military is also, man is very strict in the time, Okay, thank you very much.